Hello everyone, and welcome back to, wait a minute, no, this isn't one of my normal series. I'm on a multiplayer server. And this isn't even my channel. Wait, what's going on? What I am doing here is I'm actually going to be doing a tutorial series for the Gorge server, because we've had a lot of people coming in recently, and some of them are making some fairly new mistakes, and some of them are brand new to the mods entirely. We've got a couple of people who have been coming in from vanilla servers, and they're like, what is all this crap with industrial craft and build craft? Can someone help me? Well, that's what this series is about. I'm going to be walking through some basic mod items, and eventually graduating into some more complex subjects like nuclear reactors and stuff like that. But for right now, yeah, there's a My Little Pony discussion going on. I don't get the whole brony culture, so don't expect a whole lot of commentary on that subject from me. Anyway, I have set up this tutorial zone so that you guys can walk through here if you play on the Gorge server, or if you decide to come check us out, you can walk through and take a look and see what I've done. In order to get here, once you've logged into the server, and I believe you have to be a regular in order to do this, so you can't just be a white name. You have to have played on the server long enough to, earn the right to change worlds. But you can use /mw go to tut, T-U-T, and that will bring you to this little tutorial box that I'm standing in now. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and head down here and get started. So, I think probably the best place to start is going to be with the industrial craft mod, since that's where pretty much everyone starts when they start playing modded servers, because industrial craft just does so many good things for you early game. Industrial craft is definitely an early game to mid game mod, so we are going to start, and yeah, somebody put a nice little tag up there for me, but we are going to start with industrial craft machines and generators. So industrial craft is all about machines and power, electrical power. First of all, we're going to cover the generators. There are 6 different types of generators that are commonly used in industrial craft. The basic one is just the generator. It's right here. It burns fuel, which means it burns coal or wood or sticks or whatever. Basically, if it burns in a furnace, it'll burn in a generator. It produces varying amounts of power depending on what you're burning. There's also a couple of specialized fuels that you can burn that give you more power, but it always produces 10 energy units per tick, or EU per tick. This here is a geothermal generator. It does not burn regular fuel. What it does is it burns lava. It produces twice as much power per tick as the generator, and it also produces quite a bit more power overall. So it's a good thing to start with, in my opinion. If you don't want to burn a whole massive amount of coal, geothermal, if you have access to a large lava pit, is a great way to go. Another thing to note is that if you are using the Buildcraft mod, which our server is, you can also pipe lava in instead of having to put buckets or cells in, which is also really nice. This here is a water mill. It burns water, kind of like a geothermal burns lava. You can put water buckets in here, and when it's running on water actively, it'll produce 2 energy units per tick. Now normally, if it's just sitting in water, it'll produce a little bit passively, but it does not on multiplayer. It might just be our server, it might be multiplayer in general, but the passive effect is bugged. It produces nothing. So if you're going to use water mills, supply it with water. Not just stick it in water, you have to actually get water in there. And in a tutorial coming up, I'll be showing off a water mill farm, which will produce a decent amount of energy, but it's a little more of an advanced subject, so we're getting it through the basics first. This here is a windmill. Doesn't work, don't use it. Enough said. This here is a basic solar panel. It doesn't use any fuel. It produces very, very small amounts of energy. It only produces 1 energy units per tick during the day, and at nighttime it produces none. Now, our server also does run an advanced solar mod. We either use compact solars or advanced solars. Right now we're using advanced solars, so if we type in solars here, you can see we have an advanced solar panel, a hybrid solar panel, and an ultimate hybrid solar panel. which these produce 10, these produce, I believe, 100, or these produce, I believe, 64, and these produce 512. Now, these also produce smaller amounts of power at night, 1, 8, or 64. So, they do work at night if you're using an advanced solar, but the regular solar here doesn't produce anything at night. Only produces during the day, it also only produces during clear weather. And then this here is a nuclear reactor. These things are very dangerous unless you know exactly what you're doing. Don't use them. If these things blow up, they tear huge chunks in the world. They do produce potentially a ton of power. However, the amount of power that you get out of it is going to depend on how much uranium you have in there, and to a lesser extent how dangerous it is. Reactors that run more towards the edge of heat balance tend to produce more power, but they also use more uranium. Yeah, if you do come in here and you put uranium in here, yeah, fair warning. Now, if we come over here, these are the machines that you can get. And I'm going to be coming back over here in just a second, but let's cover the machines first. The first machine that you'll probably want to look at is called the macerator. This turns ore into dust, which basically, when you cook a dust in a furnace or an electric furnace or whatever, each one is going to produce, or each piece of ore that you burn is going to produce 2 dusts, and each dust will produce 1 metal bar. So, using the macerator basically doubles your metal profit, and it works for any type of ore. It works for iron ore, copper ore, tin ore. It doesn't matter if it's industrial craft, red power, forestry. It doesn't matter what kind of ore you throw in here. One thing to note, when you macerate an ore, even if it's a red power or a forestry ore, it will turn into the industrial craft equivalent. So, if you put RP2 ore in here, you're going to get IC2 dust out. This machine can only take low voltage current. It can't take anything more than 32 EU per tick. If it's running constantly, it's going to use about 2 EU per tick to run. This here is an electric furnace. It's faster than a regular furnace. It uses electricity instead of coal, and it's also smarter. If you put a piece of coal in a regular furnace and you're only cooking up 1 piece of ore, it's going to cook that 1 piece of ore and then it's going to waste the rest of the coal. This, when it shuts off, or when it finishes what it's doing, it will shut itself off and stop using power. So it's also a great way to conserve resources. Not to mention it's just faster, so it also only takes low voltage current. This one requires about 3 EU per tick for constant use, so it's used a little more power. This here is a compressor. It's basically only used for industrial craft recipes. There aren't any real vanilla recipes that you can use in this, except for making diamonds, which basically, look it up. Basically a stack of coal, if you macerate it down into dust and combine it with some other stuff and compress it, gives you a diamond. So, but it's also used to make like carbon plates and alloy plates and some of the stuff for advanced machines. This machine isn't really necessary to get started, but you'll want to have one sooner or later. This one takes low voltage current as well. It uses about 2 EU per tick for constant use. This here is the extractor. When you are going through tapping the rubber trees at the beginning of industrial craft, when you're picking up all your sticky resin, if you cook sticky resin in a furnace or an electric furnace, you get 1 piece of sticky resin, or you get 1 piece of rubber for each piece of sticky resin. With an extractor, you get 3 pieces of rubber out of each piece of sticky resin, so it basically triples your income. You can also stick rubber wood in this to get 1 rubber out of it. You can also use the extractor to make stuff like coolant cells and stuff like that, but mostly it's used for rubber. This also uses 2 EU per tick and can only take low voltage current. This here is a recycler. It's actually an upgraded form of a compressor. This turns junk into scrap to use for other stuff. There's 2 things that you can do with, well, 3 things that you can do with scrap. You can make fertilizer for industrial craft crops, which very few people tend to use, but whatever. You can make scrap boxes out of it, which gives you a random item when it's used, or you can use it with another machine, which we'll get to in just a second. This also takes only low voltage current, about 2 EU per tick. This here is a mass fabricator. This will take any industrial craft energy that you pump into it and will slowly convert it into something called UU matter. It's basically pink goo that you can use to make other sorts of matter. You can use it to make grass, you can use it to make reeds, cactus, you can use it to make diamonds if you really want to. But the biggest thing that you can use it for is to make iridium plates, which are used for some of the very, very high-end industrial craft stuff, including all of the cool quantum armor and all that. This can take up to high voltage current, so it can take up to 512 EU per tick packets, and it'll eat as much as you can feed it. So if you have it connected onto a line and you don't have it shut off, which by the way you can shut it off by putting a lever on it and turning the lever on. If this gets a redstone signal, it shuts itself off. But it will suck down all the power it possibly can, so be aware of it. If you don't want your power banks to be empty, shut off your mass fab. One of the rules on the server is that all machines have to be shut off anyway when you leave, so don't leave it running. Now this machine, if you look in here, which down here we've got this little thing right here. If you put scrap in there, it's going to make any energy that's thrown into here 6 times more effective. So it's best to run this thing if you can supply it with a constant stream of scrap. It will produce UU matter slowly running off of just regular power, but it's a lot more efficient to use scrap. So now we've seen the generators, we've seen the machines. Now we just need to see how to store all of the excess power that we're producing, because we're going to produce a lot of power from these eventually. And these machines don't use it all, so we need someplace to put the excess. That's where these come in. These are your storage units. Now notice there's a dot on these. The dot is the output. You can input current to any side of these. The dot signifies where the current will come out of. This here is a bat box. It stores about 40,000 EU, and it outputs at 32 EU per tick. This is a low voltage. So very, very good for initial storage. It's also really cheap to build. Good starting point for industrial craft. Note that it can also only accept up to 32 EU per tick. You can't pump huge amounts of energy into it. So if you have a nuclear reactor here that's outputting like a crap ton of power, you cannot connect it directly or it'll blow up. You can connect multiple generators to it or multiple geothermals. That gets into the whole packet thing, which we'll cover in the next episode. But for right now, just 32 EU per tick. This is your basic entry-level power storage. The next step up is the MFE. This stores 600,000 EU, but it outputs at medium voltage, 128 EU per tick. That's important to remember because most machines can only accept low voltage. If you connect it directly to an MFE, it's going to blow up. And then this here is the big bad MFSU. It's pretty expensive. It stores 10 million EU, and it outputs at 512 EU per tick, or high voltage. So the only thing that can directly accept current from an MFSU is a mass fabricator. In order to make these other storage units work with these machines, you have to transform the power. LV transformers. Now, one thing to note about these, there are sides with 1 dot and sides with 3 dots. The 3 dot sides are where you pump in the high voltage current. The 1 dot sides are where the low voltage current that results from it will come out of. An LV transformer takes in 128 EU per tick in this side, and then will output 4 pulses of 32 EU per tick out of this side for every 128 it gets here. So you're getting the same amount of power, just converted to a lower voltage. This is a medium voltage transformer, which does the same thing except it transforms high voltage to medium voltage. And then this here is the high voltage transformer, which transforms extreme voltage, 2048 EU per tick, which basically you'll only ever get out of a nuclear reactor, into 4 pulses of 512. Now you can combine these. You can run these in series. Like if you're taking power from an MFSU, you can have it feeding into an MV transformer, and then have that feed into an LV transformer, and then use that to power your machines. One thing to note is that if these have a redstone signal on them, they will function in reverse. It will up-convert the signal instead. So if you have 32 EU per tick feeding into these dots here, and you have this redstone, it will take 4 packets of 32 and convert them into 1 packet of 128 and send it out this side. So if you're wondering why your transformers aren't outputting power, make sure they're not getting redstone. That's probably a good idea anyway, because if you accidentally redstone this, you could potentially blow things up. So make sure you're using the right transformer for the job, make sure it's not getting redstone, and make sure everything is connected with the proper cable. As far as the proper cable, we'll get to that in the next episode. This has been Nightdagger with Basic Industrial Craft Machines 101 for Gults Gorge, or, just industrial craft in general. So, if you guys have ever wondered and you're just stepping into the world of industrial craft and you need to know what these machines do, well, now you've got a little bit of an overview. At later episodes, I'll cover some of the more advanced stuff and how to wire these machines effectively. So, hope you guys enjoyed this series so far, and I'll catch you later.